Hey everyone, this is Nick from the Botch Pit. Today, we'll be discussing the Summer Court, also known as the Iron Spear, the Crimson Court, and the Court of Wrath, for Changeling the Lost. The sourcebooks used for this broadcast were both Changeling the Lost, 1st and 2nd edition core books, as well as the sourcebooks Autumn Nightmares, Dancers in the Dusk, The Equinox Road, Goblin Markets, Lords of Summer, Rites of Spring, Swords at Dawn, and Winter Masks for Changeling the Lost. At the end of this broadcast, we will also discuss what the sourcebook Lords of Summer contains. Before we begin, let's revisit what a Changeling Court is. The courts, as a very high-level overview, are the main structures of Changeling society. Now, don't confuse this with a Freehold. A Freehold is a local society of changelings that have all banded together after escaping the true Fae. Think of the courts more like their overseers, and as such, each Freehold has their own local courts, which are usually reflections of the larger ones. For a complete, in-depth overview of what a court entails, please visit the first recording of this series, the Autumn Court. A link is in the description below. Going forward, we're going to apply this truncation method so you don't have to listen to it over and over again. The Summer Court, the court bound to summer, wrath, and military strength, is the 4th and final seasonal court we will be discussing, as today is the summer solstice, which marks the onset of summer and at the time of the longest day of the year. Introduction. Those changelings lucky enough to break free of Fairy and escape to Earth will always fight tooth and claw not to be enslaved once again. The changelings of the Crimson Court, however, draw power from that anger they bear towards their previous captors, using that strength to fight back. The Summer Court welcomes any changeling willing to fight to their last drop of blood for their own, as well as others' safety. Their enemies are to be faced and defeated together, doing what no lone refugee could do without companions. Otherwise, there was no point in freeing themselves of Fairy in the first place. Although not all members of the court are strong, all of them see strength as the best means to achieving their security. Strength is an ideal for them. It's the ability to weather what the world thrusts upon them and the power to shape events in their favor. Those courtiers who do not wield such strength pursue it, of which the court always assists in their pursuit. The Iron Spear's dedication drives it to lend aid to any lost who need help fighting off the true Fae. It's an ultimate measure of their power. If the court can fight on behalf of all changelings and win, it will successfully earn its safety through its creed. The Summer Court wears many faces, all of them angry. Some focus their anger and wrath, funneling it into actions of justice and defense. They protect the Freehold, taking up arms against true Fae incursions, loyalist sellouts, savage hobgoblins, and whatever other threats await them in nightmare and shadow. This protection extends to mortal humans too. The aimless and ignorant masses sometimes need a hand to walk them through difficult times, and sometimes they need a fist to knock back those that threaten them. The court doesn't punish needlessly though. Justice is fair, given some semblance of balance. Everybody gets a shot. However, wrath, like the heat of the worst summer, sometimes burns out of control. When revenge grows icy, Summer Courtiers become soulless automatons, marching to the beat of an autocratic hunt. Oppression, surveillance, and dictatorship rule the day. Legends. Thousands of years ago, the seasons were at war. It is said that winter started it, refusing to melt her snows and cede the land to spring. Soon enough, all four were reaching for each other's throats. However, it didn't take long for winter, spring, and autumn to unite against the fiercest of them all. Summer. Fighting the battle on 3 separate fronts, Summer knew he couldn't last. His failsafe was to place part of his soul into a fiery bird and send it away to be safe. 100 tales recite what happened next. Whether it was a soldier, maid, prince, or princess is lost to time. However, what is important is that they located the firebird and kept it safe. The hunters of winter, spring, and autumn came after it, beasts of ice, flowers, and withered wood. At last, they returned the firebird to Summer, ending the war, and more importantly, earning his gratitude. We don't know the name of that first founder, but we all share their heart. The tale of the founding begins with 3 siblings. The oldest son, who was as strong as the ocean, the middle child, who was as hungry as fire, and the youngest sister, who was as fast as thought. One day, using these gifts, they fled Arcadia from their all-seeing father. Almost at the brink of the mortal world, the siblings heard a terrible howl, and when they looked up, they saw a wolf so immense it was chasing the sun itself through the sky. Without hesitation, the three siblings leapt to assist the son without a second guess. The youngest sister led the wolf on a chase, distracting it from what her siblings were doing. The middle child feasted upon the soil, digging a large pit. When the wolf, in its distracted state, fell into the pit, the oldest son lifted a mountain, slammed it down into the pit, trapping the wolf there. The ordeal over, the grateful son revealed itself as High as Summer and pledged its gratitude to the three of them for their assistance. Summer promised to teach the descendants and apprentices of the three siblings how to defend themselves against the wolf, for sooner or later that wolf will escape the pit and come looking for us. It was a patient sharpshooter that caught Summer, not a brawler, biter, or berserker, but to the fear of most of us, a hunter. Running for a month, every time Summer looked down, it saw this mortal always steadily tracking it. Summer, in a fit of anger, rolled out a ferocious sun to blister and burn its pursuer's flesh. Without uttering a word, the hunter raised their firearm and shot the sun down from the sky. Summer turned its chariot and rode on, unsure of what had just happened. After another month had passed, Summer's anger boiled again and threw out another sun at the pursuer. However, the same results happened. This event happened again and again. 9 months, 9 dead suns. At last, Summer stopped and decided to face the pursuer head on. The hunter's face was calm, but in his eyes, Summer saw wrath. It was at that moment Summer understood. History. Sam Noblood was the founder of the Summer Court. His last name, Noblood, was incredibly odd as his mane flooded and dripped with red during a fight. However, as the story goes, and there's little reason to doubt it, Sam was the second coming of Achilles. It was said that he couldn't be cut by any hand but his own. He wasn't the first one to think of pacting with a season. However, he was the first one to actually pull it off. Figuring that Summer's only fear was fall, he crafted a spear out of dead wood and autumn leaves before setting out to chase Summer like a boar hunt. After a long pursuit, Sam cornered Summer and extracted a promise. In exchange for peace, Summer would support Sam's court. He won that oath by the strength of his arm, and Summer accepted, as if Sam could pin a season's ears back, his court had a real shot against the kings and queens of Arcadia. This history embodies the Crimson Court's way to succeed in life through strength. What is worth keeping is worth fighting to keep, and a fight only ends in your favor if you make it so. To members of the Summer Court, everything is something they must learn to endure and overcome. However, that doesn't mean to go about it alone. Themes. Wrath. The imagery of summer implies dynamism, and it frequently concerns conflict. As the heat rises, the pot boils over. There is a righteous wrath in the heart of nearly every member of the Summer Court. Somewhere deep, they want their tormentors to feel as helpless as they themselves once did. It is something these changelings must deal with. The sheer anger about how they have been abused. The rage of those who took what can never be returned. The Courtiers of Wrath know how angry they are in their heart and try very hard to spend their wrath on something, anything, so that they do not lose their control. Strength without aim is too dangerous for the court to favor it. Wrath is rejection. Wrath doesn't accept that things are the way they are, and there's nothing to do about it. When someone shoves a knife into you, wrath is the urge to pull that knife out and stab it right through their neck. Wrath doesn't make you happy, even if it dulls the immediate pain and gives you something else to think about. It might lead you to sacrifice yourself for an empty promise of vengeance, but nothing gives a hunter pause like a target that has decided it's not going to be prey anymore and stands back, screaming back through blood-flecked lips. The Summer Court teaches that you shouldn't think of it in terms of a consuming wrath entirely. It is meant to just be held for a while, to forge it, to hone it, and give it a new target. A target that honestly deserves it. Members of the Court of Wrath do burn out occasionally, often becoming courtless after losing their driving anger. The saying goes, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Recognizing this phenomenon, the court makes an effort to provide its members appropriate fuel for their rages without letting it burn too brightly. One of the court's core purposes is to prevent its members' wrath from consuming them or from dying out and leaving changelings undefended. In the pursuit of wrath, courtiers frequent sporting events as there is wrath in every competitor at a contest. Wrath lurks behind the desire to be victorious, disguising itself as competitive nature. What wrath really wants is the others to fail and you to win, and a competitor wants the others to go down. This is the reason the Summer Court holds so many informal competitions. In addition to honing their strengths, the contests burn their anger. The members work to keep their fires banked, so the flames will burn hot when the Fae need them to, but not before. Wrath is easy to harvest, especially in a large city. The city's full of people tightly packed, and hell is other people. Talk to a Crimson Courtier, and they'll say glamour harvested from wrath tastes like heat. Sullen, suppressed anger has a low, slow burn, and a berserk tantrum has a peppery explosion. Truly righteous wrath has a cleansing, spicy heat that seeps into the lungs, while hatred and the lust for vengeance adds a metallic aftertaste. If they're unlucky and foolish enough to try drawing on the rage of something not human, like a werewolf, then it's like drinking molten gold. Anger. Many changelings fear summer more than they fear autumn. A summer courtier's rage might be triggering in its familiarity when compared to the true Fae. Sure, wrath can deter the true Fae. However, anger will drive loved ones from you, or worse, hurt them if they don't abandon you. Fire is a horrible burden to bear. Its nature is to consume, and without control, it destroys everything around it. Learn restraint, or risk destroying yourself and everything you love. The line between wrath and anger is a fine thread spun from semantics. Summer philosophy holds that anger is wrath with less discipline, less direction. Anger clouds your eyes. It drives you to strike. Strike now, no matter what or who you hit. Anger creeps up on you when you don't have clarity or purpose. It makes you toxic. And worse, when the toxin runs its course, it leaves you weak and fatigued. Wrath is tiring, and anger doubly so. The turning of seasons. High summer. The Iron Spear sits idly back for 3 seasons, watching the other courts ignore martial concerns. While the Spring Monarch typically leaves the Freehold in high spirits, it is also usually complacent. When summer takes power, it's time for action. The kings and queens of summer are exceptionally intimidating creatures. If wishing to avoid conflict, you join some other court where it's okay to hide or talk your way out of trouble. An Ascendant Summer Monarch tends to focus on defense or offense. Defense involves activities such as gathering useful tokens of war, setting watchers on potential hedge points of entry, building up the armory, and extracting packs of alliance from whatever neighbors can be trusted to keep their word. Offense entails scouting missions deeper into the hedge, grand hunts of particularly dangerous hobgoblins, and moving on opportunistic ventures. Low summer. When another season holds power, the Summer Court insists on offering counsel. They try to assist in order. A Summer Advisor stands as close to the throne as they can, fully armed. They defer to the reigning monarch in regards to most things, like a good soldier, but always have an opinion when there's a mention of a huntsman or of the true Fae. High-ranking Summer Courtiers tend to split between looking inward and outward. Focusing inward is usually a matter of keeping the Freehold defenses shored up. Looking outward entails many things. Small offenses, against the true Fae in particular. A hunt during low summer might not be large and grandiose, but even a few truly dedicated summer soldiers can do some real, terrifying damage. In most freeholds, a Courtier of Wrath keeps something like a bounty system running year-round, making public the descriptions, last known whereabouts, and names, if available, of the Freehold's most dangerous known enemies. The payments for a summer bounty are as strange and tempting as you might expect. Cash is certainly possible, but the truly dangerous targets are worth weapons, tokens, and pledges. The summer recruitment pitch is based on unity. Everyone does their part and will always have your back. It's an attractive offer to those lost looking for a new place to belong and comrades they can trust. Some of them take well to crafting, be it gunsmithing, archaic weapons and armor, or restoring and improving vehicles. To be Summer Court is to remember the necessity of vigilance year-round. Most Crimson Courtiers understand joy, just not unfettered joy. They dance and sing and even laugh, sometimes at the Freehold celebrations, but the Iron Spear is always alert and vigilant. Give and take. The bargain of summer is very straightforward. When a summer monarch holds power, the true Fae and their underlings must fight to the last. This compulsion, however, isn't courage. A true Fae may be hollowed out by panic when it realizes that its enemies will not flee, and it, in turn, cannot. It can only try to push forward, hoping that it's as invincible as it believes itself. The Summer Court takes clever advantage of the bargain during a hunt, as if they can find a weaker enemy party, all they have to do is to force the enemy to draw weapons in self-defense. The rest acts out on its own in a bloody formality. Summer doesn't equivocate or flee. Summer offers strength and focus. Strength is to be had in the contracts of summer, but focus is a philosophy contrasted to the true Fae, and therefore the first line of defense. The season guides its courtiers down a straightforward path, because straightforwardness is a weapon in its own right where the true Fae are concerned. Mercurial Fae, given to expect an echo of their fickleness, wither when confronted with the intense focus of the Summer Court. In return for this strength and focus, Summer asks for blood sacrifice. The Crimson Court celebrates their season with competition and physical mortification, whether that be cage fights, bonfire leaping, coal running, branding their skin, or staging eating contests, sporting matches, and mock battles. The court stokes the flames of summer with aggression, and has many rituals to direct that aggression safely against their own. Ideals of Sun and Song. The Summer Court has 6 different ideals that it stands by. Brotherhood. The Summer Court is a bit like a fraternity or sorority. The Iron Spear claims to be all for one, one for all, and they provide backup as well as support. Its members celebrate the successes of all courtiers and form a unified defense against the politicking of other noble lost. This brotherhood, though, can break down in some freeholds, with individual interests taking the most importance. At least most summer courtiers stab you in the front, though, and not the back. Combat. The Summer Court will show a changeling how to fight back. Many lost have anger in their hearts, and that anger can be directed towards some degree of martial prowess. Everybody has 2 fists. Everybody can swing a baseball bat. It doesn't take much to be able to bring a hurting down on someone, and the Iron Spear can help. Defense. Not every changeling in Fairy was the victim of abuse. Some were drugged with beauty or formed into callous knights, with only the barest memory of once being a good person. However, the Summer Court will have you believe that every changeling was used, abused, tormented, and violated during their captivities, and that the Crimson Courtiers are the only ones who stand in the way of that happening again. Now, that's a broad brush to paint with, as they put themselves as the defenders of innocence, both mortal and changeling. Sometimes this is true. Other times, the Iron Spear Courtiers are the monsters, and they just don't see it. Competition. Males must compete for the breeding rights of the best bred females. People compete to win accolades in the form of gold medals around their necks, and having legends spoken about them. Sharks have to swim forward or they drowned. Sharks are winners, and they don't look back because they have no necks. Competition is healthy. It's not a thing to be feared. Most of the Summer Court's rituals and holidays offer some semblance of competition. Bizarre hedge Olympics, brawling matches, chess games, paintball, target shooting, jousting, etc. The Summer Court knows that survival is on the line, and Charles Darwin nailed it. Only the fit survive. Greater good. The Iron Spear knows that its actions are not always easy or moral. They get their hands dirty and sometimes have to kill. They seek out and rout the Freehold's enemies from the darkest parts of the hedge. Hard choices abound, but these courtiers make them daily. The reasoning is because the Summer Court is profoundly utilitarian. The Freehold's safety is paramount. Humanity also must be kept secure. Sometimes, one changeling or human must die to protect the rest, a self-sacrifice for the greater good. Sometimes, one's privacy or rights must be cast to the wind so that the strength of the whole remains unbroken. The Summer Court isn't about helping individuals, it's about helping everybody, at least in theory. Revenge. The Summer Court offers a chance at revenge. They will help a changeling gain their vindication by putting a sword or a gun in their hand. They'll even show them how to use it and back them up too. Whispers kept quiet. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Distilled from the ideals presented by the court are three separate concepts that reflect the other side of the coin. Brutality. Violence is a living thing. Some liken it to a worm that burrows into the heart or a wolf that lives inside your ribcage. It takes control and muddies one's clarity. Inevitably, some changelings of the Summer Court grow scabs over their noble ideals and give in to brutality. They don't just save the princess from the ogre, they break his knees, cut off his ears, rub his face in the muck. Maybe they let him die, finally, but maybe they curse him to a life deformed. Sacrifice. This is related to the hard choices for the greater good idea, but it's easier to think of the greater good than the personal sacrifice. Many Summer Courtiers sacrifice mightily. They lose loved ones, can't pay bills, shut out family and friends. The worst sacrifice of them all is perhaps their innocence and clarity. The pursuit of vengeance and justice takes a wretched toll. Struggle. They don't make this clear up front, but the struggle for prominence and status within the court is a fickle one. They don't make the climb up the ladder easy in most freeholds. Every rung, someone's kicked in your face or coated the ladder with slick blood, so you fall back to the ground. Those above the untested work their tails off to get where they are, and have little interest in letting their younger set surmount them. The competition for status is thick. The hazing is, at times, unbearable. Rituals. Contests of physical skill are the most common rituals of the Summer Court. The court is full of changelings who place great value on sheer force or ability, and it pleases them to know who is best at any given thing. Wrestling matches, mock combats, foot races, free running, climbing competitions, martial arts contests, tests of archery and marksmanship, and many other competitive endeavors are among the usual suspects. Most courtiers have running scorecards in their head that tell them who has beaten whom and how many times, creating an approximate pecking order that differs for each category. One recent tradition that has caught on among many Summer Courts is to arrange official contests during their periods ruling the Freehold. Each of the three contests tests a quality that which another court is considered the best. They each choose a champion for each contest, and the best Fae brings honor and prizes to their court. Unsurprisingly, the Autumn Court usually wins the contest of invention and magic. The Winter Court usually wins the contest of stealth and subterfuge. Artistry goes to the Spring Court, etc. Most changelings see the contests as an opportunity for the Summer Court to challenge other courts on their home turf, trying to show them up. Few, however, realize that the contests were designed to spread goodwill, as members of the other courts reinforce their pride. In this way, the Summer Court builds social awareness of the court's individual strengths and weaknesses, shoring up areas that the true Fae might try to exploit. Some Crimson Courtiers also try to take part in human competitions, though different courts take different stances on such activity. While excelling at a craft is very much in line with the Summer Court's nature, doing so can also attract unwanted attention. Celebrations and ceremonies. The following holidays are all bound to the Freehold by contract. That's right, the Summer Court is expected to perform these events. A failure to perform them can be somewhat disastrous, at least temporarily. For 1 week after the event was supposed to occur, all within the Summer Court lose the effects of their mantle. The mantle's shift to mean also fades. Of course, this can lead to some other vindictive courts to try to stop these ceremonies from occurring, forcing the Crimson Courtiers to suffer. The Shakar. June 21st. The hunt begins on the first day of summer. The Shikar, born from the traditions of royal India, is a hunt shepherded by the ruler of the summer court, known in this case as the Mir Shikar. In some freeholds, however, it's simply referred to as the royal hunt, and the king or queen is aptly titled the master or mistress hunter. This summer ruler declares one or several targets for the hunt, and the target is almost universally something that has been plaguing the freehold over the past year. At dawn that day, the hunt begins, and it doesn't end until dawn the following day, technically the 22nd. The results are simple. Capturing and destroying the target allows all who participate to fill their willpower pools. Failing to destroy the target, however, results in a -2 penalty to all resolve or composure-based dice pools for the subsequent week as a kind of low-grade depression sets in. Worth mentioning is that some freeholds make this less about a target plaguing the freehold and more about individual summer courtiers hunting down those who have plagued them or shamed them personally. If the Crimson Courtiers manage to destroy the hunt's target well before the sunup deadline, they often throw a small party to celebrate the victory. Midsummer's Yield, July 20th. This half-party, half-funeral is only open to summer court changelings. At midsummer, the Crimson Courtiers gather to remember the fallen with real dirges and funerals, flirting with death through performing their own mock funerals. This all-day affair isn't just about sorrow. They celebrate their successes, they mock their enemies, and they tell jokes, often rich with gallows humor. Some members go into the hedge and collect all the goblin fruits that they can muster, all of which will be used in the coming struggles. At the end of the night is the sacrifice. 2 sacrifices, actually. 1, a straw man whose face is painted to roughly match that of one of the court's persistent enemies. And 2, a large mammal, bear, pig, boar, ox, horse. Though some regrettably still rely on human sacrifice instead of the sacrifice of a beast. So yeah, we're not going to ignore the bear then. All of this is said to fulfill a contract that earns the summer courts continued success in their efforts to defend the freehold and rout their enemies. For 1 week after participating in this event, those of the Iron Spear are able to ignore 1 die of penalties suffered from loss of health. Feast of Strength, August 31st. It begins with a meal to end all other meals, a vast cornucopia of meats, potatoes, fish, noodles, happening as a late lunch. What follows this meal is a championship tournament, a series of physical games to test the participants. Games might be combats or manifest as sporting events, ranging from simple tasks to complex feats. All changelings are invited to participate, though some perhaps accurately declare that it's really just an event where the Iron Spear likes to make an example of the physical prowess held by its courtiers. The effects of competing are fairly straightforward. Win a game, gain a glamour point. Lose a game, lose a glamour point. July at Christmas, December 24th. This event is unusual as it does not take place in summer. However, the Iron Spear simply considers it a way to push past the common chill of the season, although thought by some to be a jab at the Winter Court. On Christmas Eve, the Crimson Court holds a raucous, violent party. Changelings leap headlong over bonfires. They brand themselves. They drink themselves into a fiery rage or slumbering oblivion. They pass around torches or crank the heat if inside. Sometimes a punk or metal band plays, something fast, angry, and most certainly loud. Those who really participate, meaning they've earned at least 1 bashing damage from the events of the party, gain, upon waking the next day, a number of glamour points equal to the Summer Sovereign's Mantle score. Although changelings of the Autumn and Spring Courts are invited, the Winter Courtiers are generally not invited unless the Summer and Winter have an unusual alliance in that given freehold. Mantle. The Summer Mantle is strength and heat. It may pulse warm like a heartbeat with a faint smell of iron, or it may be a level, dry heat that seems to press the skin flat. A stronger mantle may display heat effects like a mirage's shimmer or faint curls of steam. Standing near a truly powerful Crimson Courtier is like standing near an open furnace door. Every time they shift, it's like an exhalation out of hell. The Summer Court's mantle carries the sensation of its pure, unrelenting strength. Characters with Mantle dots 1 to 3 demonstrate aspects of heat in their seemings. Heat distortions and the sensation of a dry, warm wind are common. Mantle 4 dots and above is even stronger. Those able to detect the seeming can feel a physical heat rising from it and sometimes feel dried out. Mantle at 1 dot gives the Crimson Courtier an instinct about how to use their strength to their best ability. Characters with that rating add 4 dice instead of 3 when spending a point of willpower on a strength-based roll. Mantle at 3 dots provides protection against the dangers of the world, acting as 1 point of armor at all times and against all dangers. Characters with Mantle of 5 dots have a hidden reserve of strength to help them carry on 1 extra health level. Characters gain a glamour point whenever they enact their wrath and successfully further a goal. At 1 dot, gain bonus dice equal to your character's Mantle dots to mundane rolls to intimidate. At 2 dots, gain bonus dice equal to your character's Mantle dots to mundane attack rolls when actively defending their Freehold against a Fey threat. At 3 dots, gain general and ballistic armor equal to your character's Mantle dots, which stacks with worn armor when acting as a protector, bodyguard, or champion for someone else. At 4 dots, automatically succeed on attempts to break through mundane barriers, or otherwise deal with inanimate impediments. At 5 dots, when defending a member of your character's Freehold, their mundane attacks deal aggravated damage. Summer contracts. Summer is the season of sweltering heat and wrath, of oaths of enmity and striking down one's enemies without mercy. Fleeting Summer. The Crimson Courts' powers to manipulate wrath. The contracts of Fleeting Summer give a changeling the ability to influence and manipulate the tools of wrath of those around them. Eternal Summer. The Summer Court's contract of heat and vigor. These contracts provide changelings with physical manifestations of summer, including great heat and bright sun. Punishing Summer. These are the tools of war. These are the instruments of wrath. Long ago, the earliest rulers of the Court of Wrath forged contracts with the blistering heat of the hottest summers. Many of the clauses to these pacts are lost to the weave and weft of history, but some still remain. Those of the Summer Court use these searing clauses to punish their enemies for their transgressions, whether on the sunlit battlefield or in the dark sub-basement. Court variants. In some deserts, summer is split into 2 separate seasons. The dry summer, also known as foresummer, marks the first half of the period and is the hottest, deadliest time of the year. Wet summer, also known as monsoon summer, is when lightning and thunder herald downpours from rolling clouds, where the sunsets are like pink and red fire setting the heavens ablaze. Dry season, also known as dry summer or foresummer. Rage is the emotion of these Summer Court changelings, a slight twist on the anger and wrath found in most Summer Courtiers. The rage comes from the way that, during the long, hot and dry season of the desert, the sun may suddenly ignite the brush or the trees. Suddenly, a conflagration sweeps across the brittle, cracked ground. It's like that for these changelings. They're dry, bitter, themselves a bit cracked. Then one day, the temperature rises and a blaze consumes them and all those around them. The mantle of foresummer changelings often features flesh as fractured as the waning earth, a mantle of clay, sandstone, desert sands, and brittle brush. Monsoon season, also known as hurricane summer, the wet season, or wet summer. When the rains fall in some places, they wreak havoc and stay long. Buckets of rain batter the jungle and make the oceans roil. The wrath felt by these Summer Court changelings is personal, sanguine. Revenge against old lovers and ex-friends. Vindication of broken hearts and betrayed pledges. This is not a dish served cold, but piping hot, fresh, and bloody. The changelings of monsoon season are stormy, featuring sodden mantles, hair wet and tangled, eyes sobbing tears that will not cease, voices like the dull roar of rain or the booming break of thunder. Heraldry. The Court of Wrath displays itself proudly, daring its enemies to approach. The court's colors are rich greens, a spread of reds, and bright yellows and oranges. Symbols commonly in their heraldry includes an assortment of weapons: the spear, sword, and mace are all common, sometimes all together. A shield, sunflowers, summer berries, a bright sun or a full moon, flames or fire, a mushroom cloud, a boar, a badger, an eagle, gold, the color or the substance, iron, a bloody pen or quill, and a fist, among others. Courtiers. Changelings who join the Summer Court are usually more direct and conflict-minded, as in when they see an assault, their solution is to fight back. Some changelings stereotype those who join the Summer Court as leftovers from the other courts. They aren't elegant enough for spring, inquisitive enough for fall, or crafty enough for winter, so they end up in summer. But this isn't correct, as a changeling who is none of those things, and also not a fighter, remains courtless. Too often is the case when other courts recognize the Summer Court as a changeling's destination before any Summer Courtier meets them. They seek a foundation for their burning wrath, to defend those who can't and ignite their enemies asunder. Recruitment. An army is nothing without soldiers, and a kingdom little more than a lunatic on a throne if he has no military might to serve his needs. In most freeholds, the Summer Court cleaves to the notion that any and all changelings belong in its ranks, as anyone can be made into a proper soldier. Summer Courtiers accept that everyone's got that switch inside, you just need to know how to flip it. Sometimes it takes some hammering, sure, but when you do, it opens the door to anger. After that, all that is required is discipline. Pledging to the Summer Court is an uncomplicated affair. It essentially just runs potential members through a gamut of physical challenges. In game terms, basically all the physical skills are put to the test. The intent is to see if the changeling can keep going through it all, and to determine which, if any, skills are the individual's forte. Unfortunately, some don't exactly make the grade. It's easy to assume that the Summer Court wants changelings who can just fight. Although that's true, the reality is that the court has many needs. Among them is the concept that anybody can fight, but not everybody can think. The court needs strategists, as without strategy, the battle would result in catastrophic bloodshed. It also requires politicos too, savvy serpent-tongued generals who can interface with the rulers of the other courts. Mystics who can go into the hedge and come out with adamant seeds to fill in the tips of hollow point bullets, or gather life-saving pomegranates and apples are also in high desire. The court needs people to stand by and guard doors too. They need lost willing to march out on the front lines and maybe accept the first arrow in the eye, but the king also needs his shot. Of bourbon. Everybody can serve a role. Tests of wrath and righteousness. Some freeholds still put potential recruits through trials of skill and hardship to determine their value within the court. What follows are 3 particular trials taken from various freeholds across the world. Scenario A. The courtiers take a new recruit and drop him off in the middle of nowhere, usually the wilderness, but can also be a dangerous point in the hedge, and hands them nothing but an aurochs horn. The test is to see how long before the recruit sounds the horn and calls for help from the hidden courtiers, or also how long they can survive on their own before they cannot survive any longer without help. The court has lost more than one prospective member in this way, usually to some mad hobgoblin or reclaiming true fae. Scenario B. The Summer Court openly rejects, sometimes publicly, the recruit. When this individual least expects it, the court sends attackers to rough them up. They measure not only his martial ability, but also their zeal to survive when they might not have anything to fight with outside of their hands, feet, and maybe an umbrella or briefcase. This can go awry, of course. More than once, the recruit's skills were better than expected, and a masked courtier was sent home with broken bones, or sent to the morgue with a sucking chest wound. Scenario C. In most freeholds, the Iron Spear asks that its courtiers eliminate their fetches. Fetches are a distraction, a link to the true fae, and generally work against their counterpart lost. In this trial, the changeling is locked in a room with his fetch, who the courtiers capture beforehand, of course. Sometimes he's given a weapon, whether a revolver with one bullet or a shiv made out of a sharpened toothbrush. Sometimes he's left with his own bare hands. The goal is sometimes spoken, sometimes not. Kill the fetch. If they're unwilling, unable, or gets killed themselves, do they really belong in the ranks of the Summer Court? The Crown of Seasons. Once a day, the ruler can call a gifted crown back to their side. Summer happens at high noon. Challenge of the Black Spear. I would like to make note that this changed significantly from 1E to 2E. Mahogany branches and emerald leaves braid together in the crown, wrapping down into a magnificent breastplate. By spending a point of glamour, the king receives a bonus to his initiative equal to his mantle rating, and can't be surprised in a one-on-one fight for the scene. He can do this a number of times per chapter equal to his mantle, but against an individual enemy only once per chapter. Locations. Fortresses. Once in a blue moon, war sweeps the hedge. Whether that be the Lords of Summer going to battle against the true Fae that once claimed them, or two tribes of hobgoblins clash their rusty blades over the muddy ground, the thorn preserves the battlefields of such wars, and also the fortresses born of those conflicts. Goblin Markets. The Summer Court doesn't direct their wrath at the Goblin Markets, but they do keep a careful eye out for merchants who deal in particularly shady goods. It would be the sons and daughters of Summer to assemble a raid to break up a secret slaver operation at the market. Battle Lines. The Hedgefire Wars. Since the first man realized he could take what the second man owned by force, war has been a part of existence. Conflict over resources evolved into struggles between city-states for control of the land. This in turn became ideological crusades of nation against nation, and the only thing that evolved faster than the technology of war was the justification for one. Throughout it all, the true Fae sat back and watched, and absorbed, and learned. Conflict is an inescapable part of a changeling's existence, both on an intimate, personal scale, as well as the larger scale of the Freehold. The term Hedgefire War is common to freeholds throughout the Western world. This term refers to the martial conflict among changelings of a particular freehold, usually, however not always, against each other, and is on a larger scale than a duel or a squabble between two motleys. They sometimes involve one or multiple courts, mobilizing soldiers directly, but are more often fought through double agents. Changelings at war isn't the military conflict most people picture when they think of war. They don't have access to tanks, bombers, and military-grade infantry weapons. And even if they did, that would draw too much attention. Even the most populous of freeholds are unlikely to have a total population equal to the size of a company. And once the battle lines are drawn, each side likely has fewer men than a full-strength platoon, which is roughly 30 to 50 soldiers. For reference, the city of Endless Summer has approximately 175 subjects, with perhaps 25 more in Rose Thorn's exiled Spring Court. Hedgefire Wars resemble the more gangland violence between rival criminal empires than war as the term is used. They are small, fast, and brutal affairs. A typical Hedgefire War might last anywhere from a single day to a few weeks, and usually ending with the death or dissolution of the losing faction. Formal battles with lines of engagement are rare. Most tactics involve targets of opportunity with little to no strategy, then hit them until they don't move. Casus Belli. The courts go to war for a variety of reasons. Casus Belli, meaning cause for war, takes many forms. Territory. Unlike some other denizens of the world of darkness, changelings are not, as a rule, particularly territorial. They don't maintain feeding grounds like vampires, or police a section of the neighborhood like werewolves, but they do need places to live and ways to provide for themselves. In some freeholds, a semi-feudal court structure is broken down by geography into various manors pledged from the seasonal monarch to lesser lords, who in turn receive glamour, goods, and services from the weaker changelings who live there. In others, a powerful motley might lay claim to the hedge gates on the east side, charging a toll for their use. Sometimes this control is permanent, other times seasonal, but there are always those willing to use violence to take what others have. Territory wars are seldom about the physical territory itself, but about the resources it holds or can bring in. They are all about control. Control of a valuable resource, whether mundane or supernatural, is more than just survival, it's power. Yes, sometimes a war will break out because one group needs another's resources to survive, but the majority of them are all about increasing one faction's, or even one individual's, political power. Revolution. When the members of a freehold are no longer satisfied with the governance of the courts, a revolution might break out. This could arise due to a multitude of reasons. It might be driven by idealism in an effort to overthrow an oppressive monarchy, or it might be a facade for reasons of personal ambition. Revolutions are perhaps the most intensely personal of Hedgefire Wars, since when the battle lines are drawn, they often divide friends, lovers, and motleys depending on allegiance. Your once best friend is now your bitter enemy. The tale of star-crossed lovers on opposite sides of a civil war is a classic tragedy trope among poets, mortal, and changeling alike. Invasion. This is the one that every freehold fears most. Struggles and wars for independence are one thing, but when the hosts of Fairy come marching out of the hedge, changelings must abandon rivalries and stand together, lest they be dragged back to Arcadia separately in chains. Sightings of the true Fae, or beings mistaken for them, within a freehold's borders are enough to spread panic throughout the courts, like wildfire beckoning the Knights of Summer to their blades. The mere rumor of a true Fae's presence invokes pure terror to the inhabitants of a city. When the hosts of Fairy marshal themselves and march forth from Arcadia, the legends say, entire cities go missing. Changeling lore is full of stories about the aftermath of Fae invasions. Pompeii, Machu Picchu, Roanoke Colony, and Urim of the Pillars. Skeptics say that tale spinners will claim any lost city as the work of the true Fae, while the tale spinners counter that that's exactly what the inhabitants of those missing cities said. However, the truth is that the true Fae don't actually invade the mortal world en masse all that often. In fact, invasion from the hedge doesn't necessarily always mean that the true Fae ride out of the hedge gates on the horses of silk and shadow, at the head of vast armies of their hobgoblin retainers. In any war against the hedge, a freehold can expect to face a myriad and unpredictable foe. True Fae generals might be the most immediately terrifying, but hobgoblin skirmishers and changeling loyalists are no less of a threat. Sometimes, it's a hobgoblin who achieves a peculiar level of intelligence and power that gathers an army to its banner, and subsequently raids a freehold for its own inscrutable reasons. It may seek to capture changelings to sell back to the true Fae, or it may try to seize hollows and goblin orchards within the hedge. Other times, one of the banished might rally a small force and seek to overthrow the freehold, either enslaving its occupants or using them as a bargaining chip to regain entrance to Fairy. Ideology. In theory, the seasonal court should coexist peacefully, each fulfilling their own tasks and roles within a freehold. In actuality, however, that doesn't always work out quite so well, especially when a local court holds to beliefs or practices that vary widely differently from the normalities of lost society. Intercourt conflict is, of course, not the only potential ideological dispute in changeling society. A war among the nobility might easily break out if their multiple endowments, which have in and unto themselves strong codes of belief and behavior, conflict with a sizable presence in the freehold. In some freeholds, wars might even be fought over seeming or kith. Even mortal concerns like religion, race, or politics can spill over into Hedgefire Wars. Oftentimes, the warring ideologies aren't even directly incompatible. The monarchs and leaders might simply need a scapegoat to further their own agenda. Vanity. Changelings are no different than mortals in that petty vindictiveness, ego, and pride are also causes of war, and sometimes the lost are even vainer than humans. Most animosities and matters of pride are resolved on a personal level: political undermining, gossip mongering, and, when all else fails, the duel. However, when the rivalry between powerful and influential changelings happens, and it's left to fester, all-out war erupts among their followers. Vanity wars are usually brutal but quick, and typically end when one of the offending parties is slain or some reconciliation is reached. Fires on the battlefield. The Summer Court. War is the Summer Court's prerogative. They don't care about honor, glory, or breaking the enemy's spirit. The Summer Court cares about winning and will adopt whichever tactic will guarantee that victory. Tools and tactics, archaic and modern, sometimes find themselves in arms together in the same battle. Skirmishers armed with axes and spear are supported by snipers on rooftops with high-powered rifles, holding down the fortress waiting for their cavalry, ogres on motorcycles. Summer warriors worth anything will be skilled in both firearms and archaic weapons. Simple weapons are most effective in the hedge, and the true Fae's vulnerability to cold iron is difficult to exploit with a pistol. There is no mercy or restraint when fighting against the true Fae or their servants. However, the Iron Spear adheres to his own rules of war against fellow Lost. The Summer Court recognizes that no one is benefited by engaging in total war except when against the true Fae. Every resource that the Summer Court would destroy of their fellow changelings is a resource that is unavailable when the true Fae come. And make no mistake, they will come. The Summer Court refrains from making targets out of a changeling's mortal life. Family members, friends, and establishments are generally off limits. The reasoning is a can of worms, that once the Summer Court goes after a changeling's mortal life, the Summer Court's enemies could then go after their mortal lives. The Summer Court is unique among the seasonal courts in that Summer Kings maintain standing armies of warriors. Although typically few in number, they are invariably among the finest warriors in the Freehold. The other courts might boast knights and fighters of great skill, but Summer is the only court to regularly contract soldiers who are entirely provided for by the court's monarch. Freed of the need to earn money or glamour, they devote themselves purely to combat, drilling, and tactical planning. During peacetime, these soldiers typically serve as the monarch's personal honor guard. But when the Scarlet Banners of Summer take the field, the Guard take the most difficult and dangerous missions for themselves and lead the rest of the court's members into combat. Duels of the Summer Court. The Summer Court is known for duels of honor and vengeance that involve a variety of weapons and styles, as well as duelist codes that prohibit unskilled, yet passionate changelings from dying at the hands of formidable warriors. The Summer Court is known as a warrior's court for a reason. They examine any challenge with this question in mind. Is the matter at hand worth the possible consequences? If a changeling was exiled from a freehold for a year and a day due to a duel, that's one fewer changeling to fight against the true Fae. The political and emotional ramifications from a duel might present the changeling of the area with a weakness that their enemies could exploit pending it results in the loss of a face or a broken oath. Although not forbidden in the Crimson Court, Summer changelings do try to approach them with the correct attitudes. A changeling who challenges another to a duel needs to care enough, to be angry enough to make that bargain. What this means is that, to the Summer Fae, who are ready to lay down their lives rather than go back into slavery, the matter must be especially intense to lead to a duel. Lesser matters may be settled with a simple brawl. Of course, sometimes a standing oath prevents this, and a duel is the only recourse for satisfaction. The Summer Court understands this. They hunger for justice. It offends the court's basic sense of fairness that a wrong goes unpunished. But by the same token, the Summer Court's ethics don't always lend themselves to letting a higher authority handle such things. A wrong must be answered. Physical duels in the Summer Court are exactly what they sound like. For duels between opponents of widely varying skill level in combat, tests of endurance and/or strength are sometimes worked into the duel. Some Summer Fae feel that if a changeling doesn't have the skill to fight in a duel properly, their actions shouldn't have invited it in the first place. Summer Court Physical Duel, the Bladeless Battle. The two combatants arm themselves with blunt weapons. These might be highly ornate clubs or simple baseball bats, but the result is unrestrained combat. The battle is meant to go on longer than a fight with blades would, and sometimes participants wear armor or padding, especially if the duel is over a matter that neither participant feels warrants severe injury or death. Mental summer duels usually rely on knowledge of tradition and fact. The preparation required for these duels is intense, especially since learning precedent is often a matter of tracking down other changelings who have fought similar duels and asking how those duels were resolved. Summer Court Mental Duel, Appeal for Peace. This duel is sometimes invoked when the aggressor in a challenge is clearly a far superior combatant than the defender. The defender can appeal for peace, making the case before a judge that both combatants must agree upon that the fight doesn't need to take place because the defender is innocent or justified. The participants can use any arguments they feel are relevant, and when both have made their cases, the judge decides either in favor of the defender, in which case the matter is resolved and the duel is over, or the challenger, in which case the matter is resolved by a physical duel, which gives the defender another chance to win, however slim. Social duels in the Court of Wrath resemble mental duels, but instead of quoting precedent and arguing from a factual or traditional standpoint, the participants do their best to persuade the judge or judges by appealing to emotion. Summer Court Social Duel. Stare down. This duel might seem simplistic, but it is actually quite nuanced. The participants stare each other in the eyes, and, of course, if one backs down and breaks eye contact, they lose. But they have another option: throw a punch. If the punch is fake, that is, the aggressor pulls the punch before it connects, and the participant flinches, the aggressor wins. If the aggressor pulls the punch and the defender does not flinch, the defender wins the duel. But if the punch connects and the defender remains standing, the stare down becomes a fist fight and the duel is resolved that way. Finally, if the aggressor throws a real punch but manages to knock the opponent down, the battle is over and the aggressor wins. Mystical duels in the Crimson Court are just as varied and spectacular as physical duels. Summer Fae don't have the same kind of fascination with magic that Autumn Fae tend to. True, but they do recognize that contracts rely on the same kind of honor and magic that swearing the dueling oath does. That is, by entering into the agreement with the weird, by taking on the responsibility of using the magic, a changeling places a limit upon themselves. A mystical duel is about recognizing those adopted limitations while allowing glamour to flow freely. Summer Court Mystical Duel. No catches. This duel, commonly invoked between powerful practitioners of magic, prohibits the use of catches for contracts. All glamour for Fae magic must come from the changeling's own pool, meaning the duel is a contest of glamour management as much as anything else. One opponent might try to outlast the other, relying on avoiding attacks until they run out of glamour. Or, an opponent might try to strike at the other's weak points, using contracts against which they have no easy defense. War Magic. Contracts of the Board. The Lost possess an innate understanding of the magic of metaphor, how one thing can be so like another thing that altering one magically alters the other as well. Long ago, some clever changeling recognized the connection between games and war, and forged these contracts with a power referred to as the Great Board, the embodiment of strategy play. Each of the great courts claims to have originated these clauses, while some courtiers swear the shared history of their court, and these powers should be self-evident. The Lost of the Autumn Court often claim to have crafted it to beat the Iron Spear at its own game. However, nobody mentions the fact that the true Fae so often have affection for powers just like these. War Pledges. Changelings involved in open combat with other changelings, hobgoblins, and the true Fae often turn to pledgecraft as a way to protect themselves from their enemies. Such war pledges are often short-lived affairs, pacts made with other warriors for the same cause. Furthermore, changelings are disinclined to swear particularly demanding oaths with their brothers in arms, some of whom they might not know well. As a result, changelings at war often try to milk the most power they can out of the pledges by placing incredible, vicious sanctions on the pledges. Adversaries. Changeling the Lost. Although we've mentioned a few adversaries, such as hobgoblins, throughout the recording, a moment ought to be taken to flesh out the adversaries of the Crimson Court. Militia/fanatics. The zeal of certain militia, both enemy and fellow, is what makes them antagonists. These individuals are willing to make sacrifices that the Summer Court would ordinarily criticize, throwing pawn after pawn away in the effort to catch a single rook. It doesn't matter that these pawns might have lived better lives if they hadn't been recruited or used as unwitting bait to draw an enemy out of hiding. In the pursuit of their cause, the Warhawks have become as callous towards their comrades and fodder as the true Fae. At times, it can be especially hard to draw the line between a fanatic group and the Summer Court. Both are dedicated to taking the fight to the true Fae in one way or another, and many militia members belong, both formally or informally, to the Summer Court. Some militiamen are rational, sane individuals with a deep commitment to a goal, or at least appear to be on the surface. Some members of the Summer Court aren't above drumming up a crusade against the true Fae as a way to thin the herd of political rivals. The truth of the matter is that, at least in some freeholds, there may be no difference between the warriors of the Summer Court and those crazy extremists. The bottom line is this: don't feel forced into portraying the Summer Court as the good guy warriors against the true Fae and the militia as the bad guys. Those lines can be overlapped and blurred in the worst ways possible. The Fetch. It's not hard to surmise how the Summer Court feels about fetches. They are enemies, and they should all be destroyed. More fetches die when the Summer Court is in power than at any other time during the year. Any given fetch may in fact call down the true Fae, kill them, break their fake bodies, and burn them to ash. Then, if possible, scatter those ashes in the hedge to remind the true Fae this is what becomes of your handiwork and craftsmanship. The Court of Wrath finds much to be angry about with the imposters nestled into the Changelings' former lives. As mentioned before, in some freeholds, killing the fetch is a rite of passage into the Summer Court. It doesn't matter how it's killed. The important thing is that the fetch is gone, the Changeling's position is strengthened, and if the Summer Court can anger a few people in the process, all's well that ends well. The Huntsman. As an aside, the Huntsmen cannot circumvent Summer's bargain, but they are stealthy predators and know the capabilities of their prey. The wise, keen huntsman builds traps for their foes, not the other way around. The True Fae. The true Fae do not comprehend the flow of time, the rising of the summer sun, the lengthening of the days, the cool nights of waning August. None of it. However, never underestimate the true Fae. One changeling may see their master die in actor form and think they're a corporeal being. Another flees while their keeper is distracted by feud politics or perhaps mistakes apathy for weakness. Summer changelings are particularly inclined toward this latter point of view. Summer courtiers swap stories of the true Fae's supposed weaknesses, though sometimes the true Fae enjoy spreading lies about their vulnerabilities just to see what happens. Additional adversaries, the Chronicles of Darkness. So I'm going to admit, this is kinda new for the Changeling videos, but I feel as though this kinda needs to be said, and now seems like a very good time to start touching upon the subject. Members of the Summer Court stand between the courts and other supernatural threats, such as vampires, werewolves, and mages, and they act to stop human institutions that would do the Fae harm. For example, investigative reporters and paranormal conspiracies. For some, especially members of the Summer Court, protecting mortals from supernatural threats, and especially from the true Fae and their allies, becomes an all-consuming passion. Mortals. The Summer Court considers the protection of mortals as part of their duties. It's not a universal task. Some instances don't care about human beings, but for the most part, the Summer Court thinks of itself as a secondary defender of the innocent, the downtrodden, the plain and dangerously human. Monsters. The Summer Court knows all too well that other things haunt the night. Those who drink blood, succubi who turn into wolves to prey on humanity, mad magicians who think they know magic. Hilarious. The stories never stop. Mothmen, lights in the skies, things that lurk in the sewers, gargoyles that come alive and steal human hearts. The list is insurmountable. None of that flies on the Summer Court's watch, however. It seems that for the most part, these monstrosities exist to prey on the ignorance of mankind, and the Crimson Court aims to stand in the way. The Summer Court knows that the cities are sometimes home to ragtag cabals of human hunters who seek to put down the many fiends of this world of darkness, and they lend a hand when appropriate. Of course, they don't tell these so-called hunters just what they are. Vampire the Requiem. Let's take a moment to talk about vampires, specifically vampires. Right down there with mages on my list. They don't like sunlight. All of the Summer Court's clauses evoke sunlight, the hot summer sun to be specific. So what does that mean for vampires? None of their abilities conjure real sunlight, and as such, it doesn't do additional damage to the kindred. However, that said, it's similar enough to sunlight where it likely triggers a vampire's panic aversion to it. This is sometimes called the red fear. A vampire who witnessed a clause like Battle Bright in action must make an extended resolve plus composure roll and achieve 5 total successes, with each roll equivalent to 1 turn. If at any point one of these rolls fails, the vampire automatically flees. And frankly, even if the roll doesn't fail, some vampires are going to get out of there anyway, having little interest in suffering aggravated burns. So yeah, as of right now, I'm not going to go too deep into the other splats and core books, but I thought this was really interesting and I thought you all might like it. In most freeholds, the Summer Court claims to be largely apolitical. It's an order based on need, an army formed of the worthy, a true meritocracy. Some believe it, however, it's a lie, and many instances of the Iron Spear are less political than the other seasonal counterparts. Politicking does live in the Crimson Court, though, vibrant and angry. It is often backed up with intimidation, a hand on a sword hilt, or a Glock barrel pressed against the small of one's back. The Summer Sovereign's choosing. For the most part, leaders simply emerge in the Summer Court. When the Freehold Summer Courtiers collectively think of one among them as the ruler, that changeling manifests the crown. Think of it like voting with belief, voting with one's spirit. However, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes a crown appears on the head of a king or queen who doesn't have the support of the people, or who may not even be on the radar. Some rumors persist that from time to time, a summer crown appears on the head of a lost from other courts, a seemingly possible impossibility. Courtiers respond differently to this depending on the tenor of the local Crimson Court. Some see this as destiny and make a king or queen out of that changeling chosen by the crown. Others see it as a test and murder the offending imposter. After all, one cannot be king or queen, false or not, when one is dead. Another unusually unspoken manner of attaining the crown is a military coup. Almost universally, the one who deals the killing blow on an existing king or queen gains the crown. At least for one season, that is. In this way, a summer court can be ruled by a callous tyrant, but that tyrant only has the remainder of the true summer season to maintain their authority. Come the following summer, if they have not convinced the hearts of the courtiers, or intimidating them at least, of their ability to rule, then the crown is no longer theirs to claim, unless, of course, they opt to assassinate the new king or queen and repeat the process. The Diadem. The diadem, otherwise known as the crown of the Summer Court, is not one thing, despite what some might say. It appears as part of the mantle and cannot be removed. It is supernaturally part of the mean, bound to the lost very nature. Some are simple, others are complex. Status, the esteem of mob and army. Status isn't freely given in the Summer Court. It cannot be bought, it cannot be claimed without merit. Status is earned, often inch by bloody inch, with snapped fingernails and chipped teeth, with battered bruises and broken blood vessels. Those highest on the chain of authority had to struggle mightily to get where they are, put through paces by their once betters. Uneasy at the idea of relinquishing their hard-gained power, they tend to make the climb up the ladder just as hard, if not harder, than they themselves had it. It's why some courtiers are content to remain low soldiers and support members of the court. They just don't care enough to run that gauntlet hellscape. Those that do are said to suffer the tribulum. This is an old threshing device, crafted of a wooden framework with flinted teeth, then dragged by oxen over grain. Some suggest that this is pretty much what the courtiers of Wrath go through, though whether they're the tooth-threshed grain or the rickety tool dragged by animals remains to be seen. Status is gained through various trials and tests. Nobody offers the opportunity to take such tests to a changeling, unless the sovereign takes a shine toward an up-and-coming courtier. Tests are never easy. They might seem so at a distance. For instance, play a game of chess doesn't sound too bad at all, but the tests are often so much more than how they're initially described. A changeling might have to play chess and win over and over again over the course of 3 days, not being allowed to sleep or to eat during that time. Or perhaps the match takes place while other Crimson Courtiers pelt them with stones or paintballs, and if a stone knocks off one of their key pieces, such is the bitter whimsy of fate. Some tests are physical rather than mental. Tests exploit the weaknesses and fears of the changelings going through the tribunal. Rarely are tests social. While the Summer Court has its social aspects, they are not important to success in most instances in their cases. Although status and Mantle are not intimately connected, they can be. As one grows in social status within the court, it's possible that one's Mantle increases in equal measure. Mantle, though, is ultimately a supernatural connection with the ideals of the court. The growth of one's summer-fed mean is bound more to actions than fulfill the court's emotions and principles. Some changelings strive to increase their Mantle. For others, though, it happens naturally as a result of their actions. A crusade of violence against those who wronged a changeling might increase their Mantle within the Freehold. The Summer Court represents the factions of defense and offense within a freehold. If the lost come under threat from the true Fae, the Crimson Courtiers are there to earn their keep by slaying the true Fae, or at the very least by pushing them back to their infernal home. On a broad level, the Courtiers go to war en masse, often in the hedge against staggering enemies. Thankfully, such large battles are rare, and their defense in turn takes on a more personal level. Politically, the Summer Court acts more as a hammer than a rapier, relying more on strength of conviction and actions than on poetry and political maneuvering. This isn't to say that the Summer Court fails to have its poets or politicos, but the flavor is a bit different here than in other courts. Ultimately, the court acts as a safe harbor, and Summer has a number of ways it helps to reinforce that feeling. The Amity of Anger, Court Goodwill. Court goodwill is almost universally earned through some action on the battlefield or in favor of war. Those willing to leave the safety of their own court long enough to help the courtiers of Summer put down some encroaching menace receive goodwill. Voting in favor of the Crimson Court's political ideals is also a good way, given that the Summer Court often demands things that necessitate hard and unpleasant choices. Aiding the court's endeavors in support mode will additionally do the trick. Of course, even these modes of support are ultimately meant to help the Summer Court win the war, or at least one battle. Those in Summer are careful not to give outsiders too much power though. One ill-seeded seed can grow a choking vine. Summer courtiers are often paranoid about outsider influence, about treachery from within. It's for this reason that in many freeholds you won't find changelings with more than 3 dots in court goodwill with Summer, though it can go both ways. Sometimes the Summer courtiers are ultimately too trusting, green to the callous maneuvering and expect backstabbing of the other courts. Titles in Crimson. Sentry of the Summer's Vigil. Also known as a yard bull, the Summer Court often includes several sentries within its ranks. Sentries are little more than guards, bouncers, and bodyguards, prized for physical ability over anything mental. The only requirement for the role is to be either able to hit something or to appear as if one can hit something. Mule Squire. The Mule Squire, or simply the Mule, gets all the terrible work. Mules are essentially non-people, treated like valets at best, 3-legged dogs at worst. Unlike with the role of sentry, nobody expects a mule squire to ascend the ranks. Dust Grunt / Mud Grunt. The role of Dust Grunt, or Mud Grunt, dust chosen in areas of summer drought, mud chosen in areas where monsoons or hurricanes make it very wet, is that of a foot soldier for the Summer Court. Some martial ability is necessary, as is the willingness to step to the front of the line and suffer the slings and arrows of whatever hobgoblin, loyalist, or true fae waits behind that ring of thorns. The one thing that clearly separates a grunt from a man-at-arms, the knights, is that a grunt must supply their own weaponry and armor. The court does not provide this to them. This means that some grunts enter the streets and trods of battle armed with nice pistols and extra clips, while others barrel forward holding little more than shovels and baseball bats. Constable of Califaction. Mantle, 2 dots. Also known as simply the Calefactor or the Watch, the Constable acts as the name suggests, a sheriff, an investigator, a keeper of the peace. In most freeholds, the Constable acts as such only among the changelings within the Summer Court. Recognizing that Crimson Courtiers often suffer from volatile moods and can give in to vengeful or rowdy urges, the Constable is there largely to police their own. Man-at-Arms, Mantle, 2 dots. These soldiers and knights of the Summer Court sometimes refer to themselves as the Crimson Knights or Crimson Brotherhood. The men-at-arms of the Summer Court are better trained and better equipped than their grunt brothers and sisters. They do not have to supply their own equipment, mundane stuff at least, and are not first on the line in a fight. They are the ones that hold back. It's not a knight's job to pick off the lesser soldiers. They are the ones who go in against enemies with skill, foes with better weapons and bad tricks. The grunts go in and soften up the adversary, then the knights wade into the fray, gritting their teeth and stepping over the, hopefully not lifeless, bodies of their fallen comrades. The Sun's Tongue, Mantle, 3 dots. The Sun's Tongue, or, in the archaic, the song sung by the sun's told tongue, is a diplomat within the Crimson Court. As the only truly social role within the Iron Spear, acting as diplomat can be quite valuable and pretty dangerous. Negotiating terms with the other courts is a bloody affair. At least those marching onto the battlefield can see their opponents and their intent. Arrayer of Distant Thunder, Mantle, 3 dots. An arrayer is said to have a commission of array, meaning that they can canvass any of the freehold's inhabitants from any court to drum them up for war. As the metaphorical or literal storm approaches, the arrayer's job is to draft those outside the Summer Court to fight. It's not always necessary, of course. Sometimes the Crimson Court can handle a threat easily, though even then the arrayer must reach out to those in Summer if they're otherwise hard to reach. However, when the threats intend to overwhelm the Crimson Court, they can't handle everything, much as they'd like to. The arrayer is the one who must threaten or convince others to leap headlong into the fray. Freeholds, where the Summer Court is bloated with pride and thinks itself the only one who can truly handle incoming threats, the arrayer position is often empty. They do not admit the need for such an individual. Hunter of the Longest Day, Mantle, 4 dots. The Hunter of the Longest Day, sometimes referred to in other countries as simply the Jaeger or Chasseur, is something of an esteemed bounty hunter, a proud knight who isn't valued so much for their prowess in a large fight, but is used more as an elite tracker and hunter. Many of the Freehold's enemies are not keen on straight fights. True Fae hidden under the cover of night, loyalists striking from the shadows, fetches and hobgoblins hiding in wait. The hunter is the one who handles such individual threats. Iron Adjutant, Mantle, 4 dots. Sometimes known as Auditor, Bailiwick, or Seneschal, all with iron preceding the title. This role is actually a rather estimable one within the ranks of the Crimson. They are the right-hand person to the court's royal ruler. It also means that a lot of the day-to-day administration of court business is handled by the adjutant. The adjutant is the sovereign's proxy. Their word is firm. Or, as some say it, their word is iron. More than one has grown tired of the abuse and advantage taken, and usurps the throne, perhaps leading a junta against the sovereign. Red Victor, Mantle, 5 dots. Sometimes a champion emerges. Their wreath in a potent mantle, their eyes like lens flares, their skin sloughing off wave after wave of heat, steam rising from whatever blade or revolver they hold in their hand. Their accolades are on a list whose end cannot be easily found. A collection of true Fae hands and mason jars, a chest of mighty hedge tokens, a herd of changelings rescued from Arcadia, each comprising an adoring fanbase, and so on. The Red Victor, or Vanquisher, or Vindicator, had better be ready for the role. The Vikings believed that glory and heroism put one into the written and spoken myths and invoked a kind of immortality, and that's exactly what the Red Victor gets. They're loved in this life and remembered long after, and they cannot remain quiet or hidden as the champion of the Crimson Court. The Sovereign drags them out for every show of strength, to every salon and tournament, to every ceremony and Goblin Market. They become the emblem for the local Summer Court. Like it or not. If the red victor dies, all within the local court possessing one or more dots in Summer Mantle suffer a loss to morale. This loss is real and supernatural, manifesting as a -1 to all rolls for a number of weeks equal to the years the red victor held the title of champion. This period for some is marked with sadness and tributes. For others, it is a frenzy of sorrow, pulling out hair, scarring the flesh, setting public property aflame. The Wrath General Coalescent. Mantle 5 dots. Often known as simply the General or the Coalescent, the changeling who fills this role is sometimes equal to the ruler themselves, and in a rare few freeholds, actually has a greater authority than the figurehead king. They're a strategist, prized for mind over body, and much like the adjutant, seeks the throne. Estival/Summer Sovereign. Mantle 5 dots. The King or Queen of Wrath. The Summer Sovereign embodies the Summer Court in its fullest. Sun Shadow. Court Goodwill 4 dots. This role is reserved for those outside the court who have truly earned the respect of the local Crimson Courtiers. Someone with great court goodwill is truly worthy of it, whether having helped the king overcome some clandestine problem or having marched into the stormy hedge with a battalion of Iron Spear soldiers to take the head of a terrible true fae. The Hound Tribunal. The Romans referred to the latter days of summer, the dog days, a reference to the star Sirius, the brightest light in the season's nighttime sky. Sirius, also known as the dog star, was thought to be an angry god, embodied by the star's occasional red hue. During these days, summer's heat grows punishing, the air becomes feverish, food spoils, grass dies. The strongest of beasts and the weakest of men become mad or indolent, giving in to their worst inclinations. It is during these days that the Hound Tribunal haunts the Freehold in the name of the Court of Wrath and the Summer King. Those that intend to inhibit the court's interests become targets. Those that dare to oppose the king or queen, or worse, dare to bring harm to the monarch, are found to be enemies of the Freehold, as judged by the members of the secret noble council. The traitor's fate depends on the thirst for blood possessed by the local hounds. The line between justice and wrath is often blurred, like the lines on a hot road warped by vapors of heat. The curious thing, and to many the most frightening thing, about the Hound Tribunal is that they only act against the court's enemies during those days described to be the literal dog days of the season. Most tribunals use the Old Farmer Almanac definition of July 3rd to August 11th, though some find excuses to widen that range of dates. Some hounds cut a bloody swath through the Freehold, leaving in their wake a trail of marred bodies. Other times, there appears only a grand mystery as some changelings simply disappear, never to return again. For one, they act as ideal summer court members, some with a verve bordering on zealotry. However, they also work towards the needs of the noble order. During these off days, the tribunal watches changelings from the other three courts with an eye toward distrust. The hounds covertly gather once a month to compile secrets and suspicions and to mark potential targets. They only make judgments against possible enemies a week or two before Sirius rises in the summer sky and the dog days begin again. Once the decisions are made, the rule is that none shall back out of the judgments. To deny the judgment of the tribunal is to deny the tribunal itself, which makes one an enemy to the court and sovereign. When the dog days crawl to a close once more, and the tribunal has disappeared, or outright executed those who dared threaten the strength of the summer court, the tribunal once more draws back to its phase of suspicion and contemplation. In most freeholds, upon claiming or being claimed by the court's mantle and crown, the sovereign often finds themselves approached at night under shadow by one or several tribunal members. They tell him what they are. They explain what they do, and then they fill them in on all the secrets. Some sovereigns embrace this conspiracy as the tribunal makes a strong ally. Knowing that a secret cabal protects their actions, a sovereign might feel more relaxed in their rule. Others find this tribunal vile, but does a ruler move against this hidden jury? The summer court requires any power it can muster. Rumors of the Hound Tribunal. Joining the Hound Tribunal requires a certain proof of commitment. A changeling has to be willing to make the hard choices, so the stories go. Maybe the changeling has a close friend in the Spring Court, maybe even someone in his motley. Some say the tribunal demands that the friendship be ended, cut short cruelly and suddenly. Others say that the tribunal demands something worse, the life of that friend, a blood sacrifice. Rumor also has it that they've removed sovereigns from the throne, not summer kings, but the rulers of the other courts. Every court has a tribunal order protecting its interests. The Spring Court has its Sylvan Tribunal, Autumn has its Harvest Tribunal, and Winter has its Glacial Tribunal. Even weirder, they all know about one another and meet to hash out the future of the Freehold. Changeling the Lost, Lords of Summer. Lords of Summer concerns itself with the organizations that changelings gather in, from the Freehold to the Entitlement, to support one another. A lone changeling may have to flee and hide, but together many can stand. This book is one of my favorites in the Changeling line, and if you enjoy the lore presented in this video, as well as the other court videos, you need to read this book. It also discusses a little bit on fragmented traditions and heraldry. Lords of Summer is designed for any player with an interest in changeling society, though the tradition of the lost vary widely from place to place, and here lies a number of potential rituals, practices, customs, and sub-societies to drop into a chronicle or to use as inspiration. The prologue, The Longest Day of Summer, showcases the heat and wrath and violence that changelings see in summer, but it's a tale of the power of the group. Chapter 1, Freeholds, expands upon the structure of changeling regional politics. The shifting politics and concerns of the Freehold are looked at here, with many examples provided for storytellers and players to draw on. Demographics, distribution, organization, character, and other subjects are all discussed here. Chapter 2, The Seasonal Courts, provides a more elaborate look at each of the 4 greater courts tied to the seasons. The creed of each court is explained in greater detail. What does their emotion signify to them, and how does it reconcile with the purpose that binds the court together? The stereotypes and relationships of each court are also examined, from internal ties to other courts to encounters with other supernatural entities of the world of darkness. And to strengthen each court section also contains a new contract list. But just remember that if you're using 2E, these are all for 1E. Chapter 3, Noble and Eldritch Orders, contains 12 more entitlements to flesh out a chronicle. Conclusion. With all this said, this concludes the video to my favorite seasonal court, the Summer Court for Changeling the Lost. Yes, I said it, it's my favorite. So I guess the burning question is, where do we go from here? Well, now we can finally start looking at the Lost in greater detail. Wait, what am I saying? Other courts exist, and trust me, they will eventually get done. However, I'm going to be taking a short break from the courts to talk about other parts of the Changeling line. These include concepts such as seemings, kiths, adversaries, etc. You might have heard within these courts I started to allude to a lot of that stuff, and I think it's finally time we start talking about all this other stuff. Yeah, it's the works, I know, but someone has to do it right. Again, not abandoning the courts by any means, and trust me, there's a lot more where this comes from. Just the Queen of the Crimson Court needs to administer justice where justice belongs. Also, now that I hit the 4 main courts, I can actually begin talking about exchanges between the 4, like, for example, in some regions, summer and spring form an alliance called the Seelie Courts, while autumn and winter pledge support to one another as the Unseelie Courts. Again, these little things that we can now talk about now that we have our foundation. Wait a moment, is that a segue into something else? This has been Nick from the Botch Pit. Thank you.